So today we wanted to talk about investment committee. What is the role of an investment committee? How does our investment committee function, and why are investment committees important?
Well, they really serve as a system of checks and balances. Their goal is to see what we're trying to accomplish as a fund in a company and make sure that the individual investment aligns with the overall objectives. An interesting way to think about it is almost like a pre-mortem, or you've heard of the idea of a post-mortem, but it's like, what's a pre-mortem? Like what's about to go wrong that you haven't thought about? Because when you bring things to the investment committee, there's a bias. The teams that have been working on these have been working on them for sometimes over a year. And I'm often on the presenting side at investment committee, and by the time you get there, you're really involved in the deal and really vested in its success. The challenge of an investment committee is to both celebrate the hard work that it took to get the deal to that point, but at the same time also be objective and have the ability, the guts, the conviction, the horsepower to kill deals as needed or to reframe them.
I like your term checks and balances, because even though a company is one organization, we all have our different perspectives, our different lenses, and our different areas of responsibility. And so what investment committee does, kind of like a board of directors does for running a company, what an investment committee does is they have that ultimate responsibility for ensuring that we're making good investment decisions and all of those key investment decisions along the way.
Well, and each member on our team on our investment committee has 15 to 30 years of experience in making real estate decisions and operating real estate, and from different lenses, asset management or acquisitions or finance or operations, and they see the problems in their area, and that adds a lot of credibility and value.
Yeah, and we have on our investment committee yourself and myself, as well as our chief investment officer and our chief operations officer. And each of those roles are important. You're primarily involved on the acquisition and investment finding side. I'm primarily involved on the investor side. Our CIO is ultimately responsible for investment performance. So when the ball gets handed, he's carrying it across the finish line. And our COO oversees our property management and our construction management operations. So he's bringing a very specific lens. If there's anyone in that process that's really diving deep on kind of the functional aspects of the property, the deferred maintenance, the CapEx, the operational challenges and opportunities, he's bringing a lot of that to the table.
Each deal we look at has an investment committee memo, which is about a 15-page document that has stress testing, has an explanation of cap rates and cash-on-cash return and IRR and equity multiple and key features and tenant diversity. And there's about 20 points of data that speak to the soundness of the opportunity, but also the way that it plays to our business's strengths, the assets we have as far as team and capital and strategy. It looks at how it fits within our markets, within our clusters, within where we're going. And some investments favor cash flow more than total return, and some favor IRR over cash flow. And at the end of the day, we're working to create the right optimal mix of characteristics that our customers are desiring.
Yeah, and it changes over time. Those elements that are important, it change and evolve over time. There are a lot of factors associated with that, particularly market timing, composition of our portfolio and how it fits within the portfolio, where we see opportunities. At times, we'll see a slew of investments in a particular area or a particular product type, because that's where the opportunity set is most rich. Other times we'll be factoring in market dynamics and maybe taking a more cautious approach, or maybe factoring in our debt structure even more with more scrutiny because of the particular debt environment that we're in. So those preferences and those lenses change over time.
Investment committees, while they might seem like a straightforward thing or a very dynamic entity, there's a lot of trust and experience that goes into this. It's something to be approached calmly Sometimes on an investment committee, one member can say like, this is the one, and there's got to be enough mutual trust and respect and background. Some of our discussions go on for over an hour on a property because this property has been on a journey.
Yeah.
What's interesting is at the time it first reaches investment committee, it's maybe halfway through its journey. A lot happened to get to the point where it's being considered as an investment, but there's still due diligence. And every single time in due diligence, new facts arise, new things change. But this is the committee saying, we see the merits in this, we think it fits our strategy, we see the risks, we see how we're mitigating those. Let's go to the next step. But it's this multiple group buy-in. But I'd also say the markets are dynamic and interest rates rise and fall. Markets rise and fall, supply and demand changes.
Yep.
And it's important for the group to be able to have enough experience to see the data and also see where the data is lying to them or where the data is misleading, and to try to see the data a year or 2 or 3 or 5 in the future, and to see the scenarios where things might go off course. But it is a dance between the group bringing the deal, who needs to have enough trust and credibility to do multiple deals with the investment committee.
Yep.
And it's also the committee saying, hey, we do have trust with this part of our company.
Yep.
But we also recognize that we are open to where our blind spots are. And though we like this deal and we like you and everything's great, landmines exist. It's a careful practice dance that takes a long time to master.
Well, and that ties a little bit into our pre-flight process, or our informal pre-flight process, which is kind of when a deal feels in line with what we would do, but maybe there's a different aspect to it or something that is a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
A lot of times early on, before we're in the formal IC approval, not approval to move forward with due diligence, there will be a pre-flight of deals and discussing certain aspects. I think of one recently where we had a lender come to us with a really creative structure, and candidly, there wasn't even a particular deal. I remember there was one deal that might have worked for that structure, but we were talking more broadly about that structure and how that structure, the pros, the cons, what deal or what type of investment would be right for that. And it was a much more strategic conversation than kind of a tactical, is this a deal we're moving forward on or not?
But at every decision point, you have a lot of vested parties. You have a lender, you have tenants, you have sellers, you have us as a buyer, you have us as a buyer representing a group of investors, our real estate funds. It's a very dynamic environment, and to balance all those things and ultimately shepherd the process to great outcomes is but that said, we've purchased almost 50 deals in our company history, and we are very tried and true at this process. It takes a lot of character and grit and humility and trust and openness, but also courage and the ability to be a contrarian, to look for where you're seeing bias across maybe groupthink. Mm-hmm. And you've got to walk the line of being able to call that out and see.
Yep.
But at the same time, there is zero deals without risk. Every deal, nothing is an immediate guaranteed perfect thing. Everything has challenges, and our job is to pick the right ones. And historically, we've picked them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about where a deal evolved through that investment committee process, because I think that's an important aspect, is that it's not like, here's the deal, yes, no, move on. The part of that dynamic process that you mentioned includes within the investment committee.
Well, we recently did a deal that in escrow, there's 7 or 8 tenants at this property, but one took up a third of the property, and they were due to renew. They'd been in the complex for a long time, but they decided to only do a 1-year lease, and it made the property almost it made it unfinanceable. Mm-hmm. And on the one hand, that seemed like it could be the end of the road. On the other hand, we went to the landlord or the seller and proposed a seller financing structure in place of the debt with a significant price reduction. and the seller considered their options and decided to go with it. So, in this process, deals move. They either get worse or better. And sometimes deals die in this process, but more often than not, once you're in escrow, you're in diligence and issues arise, sellers are more motivated to find solutions than before escrow. So it's interesting how things evolve, but our IRR ended up improving with that. Our debt vastly improved, and our purchase price vastly improved, or significantly improved. So
yeah, and speaking a little bit to kind of the timing on that, so our investment committee meets to decide whether we're going to proceed with due diligence, go into contract, and actually start a pretty expensive process associated with evaluating the property, all the physical aspects, but then the leases, looking at financing, all sorts of aspects that require amount of resource of our company as well as third parties. And then it comes back to the investment committee at the end of the due diligence. And I remember with that particular deal, it looked like we had a great deal at the beginning. We thought this was a deal that we wanted to move forward on. We knew that this one tenant was a big tenant, so understanding the relationship of that tenant was an important part of due diligence. And then, of course, as you said, through the due diligence process, we found that the tenant was doing a one-year lease, making it more awkward from a financing perspective and a risk perspective.
yeah.
And when it came back to investment committee, I remember that we had agreed that we need to walk on this deal. We need to not move forward unless we can come up with a significant price reduction that would help justify that and the seller financing. So it was through that committee process that we had the collective conviction to not move forward on the deal, but then also to kind of identify where we would be willing to move forward.
Speaking from the acquisition side, maybe I'll close with the idea that, oftentimes I'm involved in the acquisitions process and it's a deal I really believe in. And sometimes I've come to the committee feeling like, this is it, we're doing this deal, and I've learned.
And you are co-CEO, by the way, so it creates an interesting dynamic.
But there's quantitative and qualitative factors here.
Yeah.
And one thing I have learned over almost about 20 years in this business is that it's really important to go through the process calmly and to be willing to let things go even after you've worked on them for a very long time. And we've had some we've had to let go.
Yeah.
But you have to both stand for what you believe in, respect the process, and try to hear what you're not hearing. So it's a mix, but I appreciate the qualitative part. The numbers are the numbers.
Yep.
But conviction is its own special thing, and I appreciate the team we've built and the way we're able to work with mutual trust and respect to get to positive outcomes.